Hey guys, what's up? My name is Rachel and welcome back to my channel, Reading with Remy. Today I'm bringing you my favorite books of 2020. There ended up being sort of 10, sort of not. It'll make sense in a minute. An entire series ended up getting 5 stars, so I just grouped them together as one book to make it a nice even 10. So, a couple books that I reread this year that got 5 stars that I'm not going to add to this list because technically I read them first in a different year, but I will mention them briefly outside of that list as like honorable mentions. I reread Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and of course it got 5 out of 5 stars, and then I also reread the first 3 books in the Kingdom Keepers series, and the first one, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So, now those are done. So we're just gonna hop into the books that I read in 2020 that are my favorite books of the year. All of these books got 5 stars. It was just easiest to do it that way, and generally if I gave it 5 stars then I really loved it, and especially if it stayed a 5-star for me, which I did reevaluate and a couple of them didn't make the cut when I thought about it later. So these are true 5-star reads for me and therefore my favorite books of 2020. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump into it. These are not in the order of how I loved them, instead they're in order of how I read them. There might be tail unshot. Anyway, so the first book that I read in 2020 that got 5 stars is a part of that trilogy that I mentioned, and that is Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. This is book 1 in the This is book 1 in the Thrawn trilogy, from the original canon, and also Dark Force Rising, which is book 2, and The Last Command, which is book 3. All 3 of these got 5 stars. These are really, really fun. I loved being back into the world of Star Wars, and these take place right after the events of Return of the Jedi and follows Luke, Leia, and Han in the after effects of the war and trying to pretty much extinguish the last threads of the Empire, in particular Grand Admiral Thrawn and his ship and his fleet are basically trying to bring the Empire back into power. These are really good. I loved seeing the different creatures in the galaxy and learning more of their backstories. It was really interesting in that aspect. These are just really good, and I really enjoyed being able to follow Luke, Leia, and Han again, so definitely 5-star reads. If you like Star Wars and you haven't read these, definitely would recommend them. The next 5-star book that I read in 2020 was Autobiography by Christina Lauren. This is the first book that I've read by this author duo, and I really enjoyed this one. This takes place in Utah in a very Mormon community, and it is about a boy who is gay and he falls in love with the preacher's son, and obviously lots of drama happens there. I just really enjoyed the romance in this. I thought it was really cute, very sweet and heartfelt, and it was just very enjoyable, and I need to read more of their stuff, but I just keep putting it off, so. Alright, the next 5-star book that I read in 2020 was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is a sci-fi thriller. Basically it's about the multiverse, but it's about a physicist who is a professor at a college, and he gets basically abducted and thrown into this multi-dimension machine so that somebody from a different reality can live his life, and it's all about him trying to get back to his wife and kids, and it's really, really good. Definitely would recommend. I don't know, it's the kind of thing where now I want to read all of Blake Crouch's books just to see if they're as good as this one. The next 5-star read in 2020 was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I have had this book since it came out in 2015, and it has sat on my shelf and intimidated me since 2015, and I finally read it this year, and it was so good! I have always loved historical fiction, particularly World War II, but I feel like this year has really reignited my love for it and made me want to read all of the World War II historical fiction. So, and it all started with this one, so I have nothing but awesome things to say about this. If you don't know what this is about a young girl who is blind in World War II, obviously. She lives in Paris with her father, and they are forced to flee Paris when the Nazis are invading France, and she ends up living with her uncle, who's a World War I veteran, somewhere on the coast, and her father gets called back to Paris and she never sees him again, so it's about her dealing with that and the war and living with her uncle and trying to help her uncle who has some serious like PTSD. So it was just really beautiful, very beautifully written. Yeah, it definitely earned this prize, so I would recommend if you have not read it and you like historical fiction. So the next 5-star book that I read in 2020 was The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I read this all in one day on audio and loved it so much that I had to go out and buy the book. This is just a really beautifully written book told in verse about a girl. And basically, it's about her and how she feels like she never fits in and she's always having to deal with people making remarks about her body. Yeah, it's just basically about her in high school and dealing with it and finding basically her release in slam poetry. And so it's really powerful. The poem at the end of this honestly makes the whole book, in my opinion, so it's really good. I love anything written in verse. Generally, there are a couple exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, if it's written in verse, like, I'm very interested. So this one did not disappoint, and it's definitely made me want to read more of Elizabeth Acevedo's book, which I actually did read Clap When You Land, and I believe that got 4.5 out of 5 stars. I just didn't like it quite as much as this one. So the next 5-star read in 2020 was The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. This is book 4 in the Raven Cycle. I actually read all of the Raven Cycle except for the first one this year. So yay, finished a series that I have been putting off for a long time. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars and not the rest of the series just because I think I wasn't quite invested in the characters up until this point. I mean, you grow with the characters, you experience the characters, and so the way that she wrapped everything up in this one just kind of blew me away a little bit. So this one got 5 stars and the others did not. But overall, this series is awesome. If you don't know what this is about, this is kind of like a paranormal-ish fantasy, but not really a fantasy. It's like an urban paranormal, if that's a thing. Anyway, it's about a group of kids, and they are trying to find the Raven King, or Glendower as he's also called, and it just deals a lot with like mystical, witchy, psychic things, and I don't know, I really enjoyed it. These are just different, you know? She did a really good job of creating a world that I hadn't seen before, so I really enjoyed these. The characters are awesome. I kind of feel like the end was a bit of a cop-out, but whatever, you know, it's YA, so it happens. But it was still really, really good. So the next 5-star read I don't have a copy of yet. It is something that I one day want to get my hands on, and that is Bloom. It's a graphic novel by Kevin Panetta. I read this on Scribd, I believe. Yes, I read this on Scribd. And I just really enjoyed the artwork, the story. It was a very light and heartfelt, very heartwarming coming-of-age story, and basically discovering yourself, finding new love, dealing with breakups and things like that, and ultimately finding your purpose or what you feel like you want to do. I just loved the art style on this, for one. Everything was done in kind of like a bluish tint hue, which I thought was really unique. And I just loved these characters. I loved the romance. I thought it was very sweet. So I definitely enjoyed this graphic novel, and it kind of like set me on a string of reading several graphic novels, and none of them measured up. So that's why this one sticks out to me. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Hopefully I'll get a copy of it soon. So the next book that I read in 2020 was finishing another series. Yay. I was actually kind of on a roll this year. I'm pretty proud of myself and how I ended with series. I believe I have more finished than open right now, which is crazy. That's something I never thought I would say. So, yay me. But anyway, the book that I read was Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. This is book 3 in the Infernal Devices. I believe the other 2 in the series got 4.5 stars each. This one, again, kind of like The Raven King, I just really enjoyed how she wrapped everything up, except for the romance. That was such a freaking cop-out. Just pick one. Just pick one, and stick to it, and don't let the fans sway you. That's my number one complaint about this book. But otherwise, I really enjoyed the way she wrapped everything up. I thought the development was incredible. Love Tessa's character. She's a freaking badass, and I love that we finally got to see her be a badass rather than like the cowering, whiny chick who hides behind Will and Jem. So I really enjoyed seeing that, and I liked what I got to see of her and Jem because I am Team Jem. It just kind of like sucked what happened, but it started out really sweet, so at least I got some semblance of what could have been, so I will just cling to that. tightly. But anyway, I loved this book. Anything that can make you just like pull you this way and that way based on your emotions is a good book. So she did a good job with basically ripping my heart out. So there you go. Good job, Cass. So the next book that I read in 2020 that is 5 stars is Avatar: The Last Airbender: The Promise. If you don't know what Avatar: The Last Airbender is, it's on Netflix. Please go check it out. It is an amazing, amazing Nickelodeon show that was for kids, but honestly dealt with some pretty hard stuff that, I don't know if I would think that kids really grasped how great this show was. The animation is awesome, the story arcs are amazing, so good. So I liked reading this one because it was a continuation of what happened after Avatar: The Last Airbender and basically Aang trying to bring peace to the world, and it was so good, and I love seeing everybody in it, and I got the second one for Christmas, but it's not here yet because it's back-ordered, because everybody loves these. So yeah, this is really good. If you like Avatar and you haven't read these, please read them. Although good luck getting them because they're selling out everywhere. So, alright, and the next book that I read in 2020 that got 5 stars was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is a really good start if you're trying to get into thrillers but you don't want to be like terrified the whole time. I really enjoyed this. This is about a girl who is working on her like senior capstone project basically, and she decides that she is going to get to the bottom of the mysterious disappearance of one of the girls in her town and the suicide of that girl's boyfriend, or apparent suicide. And basically, as she's starting to unravel the mystery by interviewing people, things start happening to her because whoever did it does not want her to find out what happened. And it's just really good. And there's a romance in here that I did not expect, that I was fully invested in and really enjoyed. It wasn't the kind of romance that took away from the story either, because that's one of my pet peeves. I hate when authors throw in a romance just to throw in a romance to get people who like romance to read them, and then it's totally pointless. This one was really well written. I was fully invested. It went along with the story. It didn't come out of nowhere. It was just a really good book, and I very much enjoyed it. So, and the last book that I'm going to talk about, I just finished, oh gosh, last week actually, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I do not have my book with me right now. It is currently at the apartment, so I don't have it, but picture over here. Anyway, The Nightingale is another World War II historical fiction, another one that I've had since it came out and never read because it intimidated me, but this year I conquered those books. So, if nothing else, 2020 was a success for me in that respect. I really enjoyed this book. Of course, like I said, it's another World War II historical fiction. This one follows 2 different sisters and their experiences in the war. One of them is like determined to undermine the Nazis in any way she can, and the other one is basically just trying to stay alive. So it's really, really good, and I honestly was surprised by the ending. It does a little bit of flashing to the present and then kind of like one of the sisters telling the story after the fact, and I honestly did not see the end coming. I was like, wait, I thought it was something different the entire time. So I really enjoyed that part of it. It's not really like a mystery or a thriller, but it almost like kind of is a mystery because you're like, who is this woman that's narrating? And you totally don't expect it to be who it is. So it was really, really good. It was one of those books that you read it and the whole time you're like on the edge of your seat. You're like, oh my god, what's going to happen to these characters? I was fully 100% invested. I gasped, I cringed, I cried. It was a roller coaster ride. I definitely would recommend the audiobook if you're a little hesitant to get into historical fiction because it intimidates you. This audiobook in particular was amazing. I got it on Libby and it was beautiful. Like, I can't even, honestly, I didn't come into this video picking a favorite book of the year, but it might be my favorite book of the year. It was just, like, I need to read all of the Kristen Hanna now just to see, or maybe not all of it, but at least one, to see if they're all as good as this one because it blew me away. Definitely, definitely recommend. So that's it for this video. That is my favorite books of 2020, or basically just my 5-star reads of 2020, but either way, they're 5 stars because they're my favorites and they've stuck with me. So yeah, if you haven't read any of these books, you should check them out. If you have read them, let me know what you thought of them. If your opinion differed, be gentle with me because I love them, but I do want to hear it. So yeah, and let me know what your favorite book of the year was if you have one. So that's it for this video, which I think I've already said that, but either way, that's it for this video. Be sure to like it if you enjoyed this and subscribe for more awesome content, and I'll see you guys in another video soon.